Thank you. Thank you for being here and welcome once again to another JKMRC Friday seminar series. On behalf of the University of Queensland and the Sustainable Minerals Institute, we would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections with country, and we recognize their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. It is my great pleasure today to welcome Janine Herzig. Janine is the Executive President of CEEC International, founder of MetVal Consulting, Governor of the MetPlant Conference Series, former Non-Executive Director of Base Resources, and past President of the AusIMM. Her role at CEEC, the Coalition for Minerals Efficiency, a registered charity, Janine is assisting the resources sector globally to reduce the impact of mining operations on the environment and communities. Janine has over 30 years of experience in the resource sector across multiple commodities in various operational, project management, and executive roles. In addition to this role at CEEC, Janine is also involved in many other voluntarily positions. So today her talk will be about CEECing, context, and gaps in the intersection of water, tailings, and other emissions. Please join me in welcoming Janine.
Thanks very much, Christy and Daniel, for organising this. I'm just going to put my timer on, which I'll probably promptly ignore when it tells me to stop talking. But it's wonderful to be here today. This is the very land on which I did my thesis with Tony Kojovic and Tim Napier-Munn as my supervisors. So it's wonderful to be back. It will always be a special place for me. So spent a lot of time out in the shed there with Doug, breaking rocks one at a time with the old pendulum. Yeah, it's really wonderful to be here. So I would like to also welcome those who are online, and hopefully there's a few of my colleagues from around the world who are listening in today and hopefully will be involved in the Q&A. I must apologise that I'm terribly disorganised this morning, even more so than usual. So I've had a hectic couple of weeks in Toowoomba with my family. So I literally was starting to think about this on the bus coming up to Brisbane yesterday. But that's all good. I will just speak from the heart, which is what I normally do anyhow. So just in terms of who's in the room today, mostly metallurgists, process engineers, chemical engineers. Anyone who's not? Social scientists, we love that. Soil scientists, yes. Geos? Oh, good. Excellent. So that's great. And I'm sure we've got a mixture online as well. And really that's an important part of what I'll be talking about today is the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration and the fact that we are only as good as the sum of our parts. So, you know, if we're not working together to solve these really complex issues, such as water, tailings and other waste, we're not going to get anywhere. So I think that's the end of my introduction, and hopefully, what do I do now? Is that a touchscreen? No. See, this is how disorganised I am. I didn't even learn how to use the clicker. So the first thing I'll do anyhow is just a brief overview of the topics that I'll cover today. Beautiful. Yep. There we go. So I've done my acknowledgements, so that's all good. And just some of the various committees that I'm involved with which I'll get to as I go through. And I'll talk about some of the things I'm passionate about. I will talk about CEEC International, and I will talk a lot about water. Water is my happy place. It's my natural environment. I've been a swimmer all my life, and I find that no matter how overwhelmed I get with anything, if I get myself into water, I feel a lot more comfortable. But we'll also touch on the ways that water can be very harmful as well in this presentation today. I'll talk a little bit about CEEC's Global Water Initiative, and also our global tailings initiative, which is just about to kick off. My experience as a metallurgist over the last 30 years has spanned across a lot of different commodities. I would say, if I was to say I had a specialty, it's mineral sands and graphite, but I have worked in base metals and uranium and magnetite and lithium and all of those other ones as well. I will touch a little bit on uranium and nuclear energy, which is another topic that I get excited about, but I probably need another talk for that. So I'll just briefly touch on that. And just a little bit on space as well, and off-Earth construction and resources, because I'm heavily involved in the space community, especially in Adelaide with the Andy Thomas Space Centre for Space Resources, and our Space Fortnight, which kicks off next month in Adelaide, which is always a great time to be in Adelaide if you find yourself in that neck of the woods. Water, as everyone will know, it's life, it's essential for human beings, and it's essential for mining. But when it goes wrong, it goes very wrong, and we end up with catastrophic events occurring. So I'll come back to that theme and some of the work that CEEC is doing to try and lift the standards of the industry, and how important it is that we focus globally on this challenge, because what's the systems and the processes that we have in developed nations are very different from those in developing nations. So we are only as good as the lowest common denominator in terms of performance and standards. So all of the work that CEEC does is aimed at lifting the standards overall. So just a couple of happy snaps. I mentioned that I was from Toowoomba, so grew up there, went to school, and then came to UQ for my metallurgical engineering degree. So we've just had the Carnival of Flowers, the old Garden City. That's an old photo, but we've literally just had it. So it's been quite chaotic in Toowoomba the last couple of weeks. My journey into the industry, the namesake of this building, the Albin Lynch building, Albin was head of department when I went through. I'd actually enrolled in chemical engineering in second year until Albin came across and mentioned scholarships. So it's his fault that I've ended up in this industry, well and truly. So he mentioned scholarships, and of course, as a 17-year-old come from Toowoomba with no money, that was very attractive. So I was lucky enough to be awarded the MIM, the Mount Isa Mine Scholarship, which was really quite transformational for me. So then we've got, this is a Kalgoorlie nickel smelter. And those of you might know Eric Grimsey there, who was one of my supervisors when I was doing my work in the smelter. And then I later worked with Eric at AusIMM, and when he was chair of the ethics committee. That one's at Mount Isa, just outside the open pit. And this one is right here, Mining Games. That was probably 1991, I think. I was paired up with my mate Mark there, who's a mining engineering student and probably about 2 feet taller than me. So it was a very appropriate pairing. And of course, you know, we could get away with wearing shorts and all sorts of things that you wouldn't do these days. But they were fantastic annual events that we had here. And my family used to come up from Toowoomba and come and have a look at what was going on there. Hopefully I haven't broken this mouse. Maybe I have. Yeah, I can't get that to move. So is there a manual way I can do that? Yeah. I'll probably put that on the wrong way.
No, you can just click here.
Okay, I'll leave it down there so I don't drop it. Beautiful. So there we go. So that's my graduation there with mum and dad on the St Lucia campus, and that was our graduation ball. So I don't think I've seen Peter Hayes here, but hopefully I'll see him tonight at the alumni barbecue. I guess I didn't really realise until I looked at this photo afterwards that it was a little bit stark, that I was the only female in that group. But to be honest, it didn't really feel like that when I was going through uni, apart from the fact that I could never miss lectures because it was pretty obvious when I wasn't there. So then as I moved on, went to ISA, number 2 concentrator in the heavy and medium plant. And then I got into mineral sands, so 10 years with Iluka in various locations before moving to South Australia and heading up the Minerals and Industrial Division for AMDEL, now Bureau Veritas. And some of the fun stuff that I've done along the way, we've got a trip there to Spence and Escondida, various field trips, lots and lots of conferences and lectures and things. That's the Essington Lewis Lecture, which is an annual event which has its 50-year anniversary next week in Adelaide. And of course, found my partner in life, Chris, who many of you know, who's a mining engineer. And we met whilst working at Iluka in Perth. So it's 18 years, I think, now we've been married. Travel's really important in our lives. So there's just a couple of pictures of us climbing mountains, me swimming. My husband doesn't swim. He has an aversion to water unless it's 40 degrees. But that's that one, a couple of those are on the Galapagos, which was something that I really, really enjoyed. Volcanoes we also love. So we've been visiting and climbing volcanoes all over the world. Some of them really, really spectacular. This one is actually in the Galapagos, and that photo was taken from the boat. That was the first time it had erupted in 35 years, and we just happened to be there, which was amazing. Some there in Hawaii, Etna, etc. And yeah, in case I forgot to mention, we do love volcanoes. Vanuatu, Tanna would be the favourite. And then family. Family, super important, and the last couple of weeks have really demonstrated that even more for me. So that's the Motley crew. They're 4 generations. The girls are bigger now, they're 5 and 2. And my beautiful father there and my mum. Just a few more family pics. We had a Herzig reunion in Brisbane year before last, which was pretty amazing. My dad is the oldest of 11 children, and 8 of them are still with us. There's his siblings there. So something else special that happened was a couple of years ago when I was elected as a fellow to ATSE, the Australian Technological Sciences and Engineering Academy. And I've been enjoying getting more involved with ATSE. Of course, in my first year, I didn't put my hand up. I didn't take my hand down. So I ended up as Secretary of the South Australian and Northern Territory Division. And I've also been involved in the Elevate scholarships, which are given to disadvantaged women and migrants and people who've had a bit of a rougher start in life. That's been incredibly rewarding. And I've also been involved in the IMNIS mentoring program. ATSE has a great structure of forums as well of special interest, and I'm a member of the Water Forum, the Energy Forum and the Minerals Forums, which are all fantastic. And we're actually in Melbourne week after next for our annual assembly for ATSE, where we welcome our new fellows as well. And I think that was just announced in the last couple of days. So there's a few of my space friends. There's an annual course that goes for a week called Space Resource Fundamentals. I did the course about 3 years ago, but now I just go back every year and just hang out with them because it's a lot of fun. And there's some very exciting things going on in South Australia and Australia when it comes to space. So I'll come back to water now. and I'm really going to have to skip over these very, very quickly, but I think it's pretty obvious that water is used in all stages of mining, and whether it's providing power in some cases, transportation, for safety, hygiene and health, for the separation process, which is mostly where I would be involved as a process engineer. So just keep clicking through there. I won't go into those flow sheets. Again, it's pretty obvious that water in mining is really stressed. There's a high proportion of sites, of course, that have very little water, or the water that they do have is of poor quality. And then there are parts of the world where there is an excess of water. So the CEEC's water initiative really has to encompass all of those water scenarios, and which makes it quite a complex project to undertake. And as we move into mining areas that are more complex, of course, we need to develop techniques and processes to allow us to use water that's of a lesser quality, if we can't treat that water to be of a quality that's suitable. And we have a number of processes which will be familiar to everyone here, desal, etc. And then we have dewatering practices. We have pre-concentration that can nip it in the bud and actually reduce the production of tailings in the first place, which are all important pieces of the puzzle. Yeah, often combining all of those is what's required. So, you know, desal, very, very expensive. And when you're dealing with high volumes in places like Chile or South Australia, often quite impractical. I'm working at the moment with a magnetite junior who's trying to start an operation in South Australia, and the cost of sending desalinated water 400 kilometres to where their site is just absolutely prohibitive. And, you know, they're trying at the moment to do flotation in seawater, which they're having a little bit of success with, but it's a big problem. And of course, then at the other end, you've got discharges, and many sites now that have zero discharge policies. So there are ways we can adapt our processing to deal with the low quality water that we may not be able to get away from. I've mentioned seawater. You know, there are things like carbon in pulp, electrowinning circuits, unfortunately, will still need high quality water. So there's only some parts of the circuitry that you can actually use water that's not of the highest quality. And I know there's some passionate tailings people in the room as well. And of course, tailings is intrinsically linked to water. There's no getting away from that. Tailings is something that I've worked on a lot over my career. When I first arrived in Mount Isa, Peter Munro said, "Janine, congratulations, you're in charge of tailings." And I said, "Oh, okay, we really didn't do that at uni." And I think that's the whole problem, is that nobody really owns tailings. And I know that there are people working really hard on this, and Naja Kuntz is one who's got a great program there at UBC with interdisciplinary work in water and tailings. And I know there's a lot of work that's come out of SMI as well, and SWMI, who CEEC is collaborating with Claire Coates' group there. We're also at CEEC working with Curtin University and ICE Chile. So it is very much a global effort to look at water. And I'll talk a bit more about the approach we're taking as we go through. You know, there's been varying degrees of success with dewatered dry stack tails, or whatever you want to call it, with co-disposal, which I did a lot of in the mineral sands industry, with modified blended co-disposal, particularly in the Murray Basin, where the slimes were up to 40%. And even on Stradbroke Island, we had the world's first floating thickener in our dredge pond at Yarraman Mine, which was quite a challenge as well, even though the slime's content was lower. And of course, it's not just about the content, it's about the type. We all know that because we all know our mineralogy, that it's much more about what the minerals are and how they interact than what the grade or otherwise is. So I'm not going to go into details on acid rock drainage and cyanide contamination. There's people who are far more qualified to do that, but I think we all know that there's a number of legacy sites around the place, and one of those that I would mention is Rum Jungle in the Northern Territory. I have met with the traditional owners of that land, and the situation that they're dealing with there is just hideous, and it's going to take probably 1,000 years to rectify that, and the community up there actually has, I think they call it the 3,000-year plan for cleaning up that site. CEEC was hoping to get access to that area and a site called Francis Creek. Unfortunately, a proposal was put to the federal government to get some funding to go in there and reprocess, and it fell through, and the government did not see that as a priority to go in and fix up legacy sites. So we've all got a lot of work to do when it comes to educating our legislators and people who make these decisions about how important it is to be able to go to these sites, to conduct research and to rectify some of the sins of the past. We all know that trust is a huge issue in our sector. So again, I won't talk in detail about tailings and geotechnical failures. You've got plenty of experts here. Unfortunately, my friend David Williams is overseas at the moment, so he couldn't be here, but I've had quite a lot to do with David over the last 20 years, not least of which was developing the professional certificate for tailings management that's run through the AusIMM, and that course is now in Spanish, which is really important as well, that we continue to work on our communication and actually talking to people in their native languages. So as I move through, we've got flooding, we've got, waste facilities failing, we've got tailing storage facilities of varying degrees. I'll just quickly run through those. And I've talked about clay, did many a slump test, especially for a Luca there. So another thing that CEEC has found in doing its research on what's out there is that there's a lot of different language. There's not sort of a formal, consistent lexicon when it comes to how you refer to what we would think are very basic things like moisture content. So that is part of the Global Water Initiative, is to actually work on having a common lexicon. So this is the premise of the Global Water Initiative, or the GWI, and we call it the water wheel, which obviously has double meaning as well, but the meaning really for CEEC is that you have interdisciplinary collaboration at the centre, and that's really what is driving all of the activities that go around it. So this initiative started out as the water curves, probably 5 or 6 years ago, before I was very heavily involved with CEEC. And when I came onto the scene a couple of years ago, we really advanced that and renamed it as a Global Water Initiative. Many of you will be familiar with CEEC's energy curves. They were relatively simple, and it became very evident that curves were not going to cut it when it came to water. There's way too many dimensions and parameters in the water space. So We had a series of collaborative workshops and we identified or sort of came up with 4 major themes. The first being social considerations and stakeholder engagement, and that's where it's been really important to have community voices and social scientists and ESG professionals involved. The second one, water management and treatment, which is obviously quite a technical and scientific solutions. Then we've got environmental responsibility and monitoring, which is, there's an element of regulation, but then there's also responsibility on mining companies and, to not only meet the requirements, but to exceed them. And then we have technological innovation and integration. So you can see that there's some more sort of engineering solutions, and then there's more of the actual engagement, the people side of the equation. We had some incredibly good news this year, which we were finally able to announce a few weeks ago after having to keep it quiet for a very long time. And that was that we received a grant from the Grantham Foundation, which is based in the US. And they also have the Grantham Institute, which is in London and is dedicated to climate change. This is really going to be transformational for CEEC. It gives us 3 years of funding to allow us to really make a difference. CEEC has always been an organisation that's relied on volunteers who are really passionate but who have other jobs to do, and it's always been pretty much hand to mouth for CEEC, and we're now in a position where we can actually put on a full-time paid person. So if anybody knows of anyone who's interested in that kind of thing, we do have a position description, and as Joe knows, we've been interviewing. We haven't quite found the right person because it's a complex role. We're asking somebody to be able to wear a lot of different hats, to be able to communicate with researchers, as well as mining companies, vendors, to be able to assist us with outreach and marketing type of activities, but also be technical as well and understand the technical things. So we may not find one person, it might be a combination of people to assist us there. The underpinning aspect of the Global Water Initiative that makes it different from what others are doing, and we have done a lot of horizon scanning and looking at what's out there already, and we believe we have something unique and something that's missing in this area, and that is the use of archetypes, or actually defining different ore bodies by their archetype in terms of their processing route, how they produce waste, what the water scenario is in their environment, whether it be climate or other inputs or outputs of the site. And then also looking at the types of separation and whether it's fine-grained, coarse-grained, whether it's a sulfide, oxide, etc. So this is progressing really, really well and has allowed us to take a very large database of operations around the world. And we've started with copper for a couple of reasons. One, the Grantham Foundation is very interested in the increase in copper production. And our sort of premise of the grant application that we put into them was that there is a lot of copper already out there that cannot be mined or processed due to various, environmental, technical, social reasons. And then it wasn't a simple case of drilling more holes to find more copper, that we can actually maximise what's already there. So we have started on copper, and we're working with our 2 major sponsors in the water area, which is Agnico Eagle and Weir Minerals. Agnico will be providing us with access to their sites in addition to their financial support. And with Weir, they have a group that operates out of Glasgow, that has been assisting us on the sort of data mining of various sites around the world and fitting them to the various archetypes. So we're very excited about the progress so far. There's been a lot happen in the last month. So I've mentioned that, you know, it is a combination of geology and geography as well as climate. And, you know, there's some kind of legendary sites, I guess, when it comes to looking at some of these things. One of them would be Century. There's plenty of others, including we have Olympic Dam, Carapatina in South Australia, and, you know, lots of sites in other parts of the world, in South America and North America, etc. So another thing that we announced recently was a collaboration with Whittle Consulting, which is very exciting because it allows us to make changes to water parameters in a more or less digital twin environment. So it's a thing called Neo Marvin, which is a fictional ore body, but it's based on 3 real copper porphyry ore bodies. What that does is mean that we can do that without accessing site and also without upsetting any IP or and I'm not even going to talk about IP today because that will be a whole other talk. So I won't go down that rabbit hole at all. I did mention trust before and how important that is, and it's something that the resources sector has struggled with, I think, since time immemorial, particularly in Australia. We have never had a terribly good record of standing together as a sector and talking about the great work that we do. So it's been very easy, I think, for the anti-mining folk to get together and tear us down. But of course, it's all about responsibility, and as soon as mistakes are made, you're back to the start. So trust is incredibly important, and that's something that is a bit of a secret weapon for CEEC because we are a volunteer organisation and we don't have any allegiances to any technology, to any mining company. Even as far as our sponsors go, there's no arrangements there as you would have with, say, an MCA or another sort of member-based association. We are very much independent, and that trust is really important. And I've also already mentioned technology is not the only answer. It's part of the solution, but it's a lot more than that. So knowing the entire water system, it seems obvious, but a lot of other organisations have tried to put a box around a part of the circuit and look at the water inside that box. And CEEC's approach is to understand the entire site water balance and all of the interactions that come along with that. Transparency is hugely important. That's how we learn from our mistakes. And it's not about calling people out. It's about making sure that these things don't happen again. And I've already talked ad nauseum about interdisciplinary collaboration. Risk, of course, is on everybody's mind at all times, and encouraging diverse voices. Education is key to this as well. So part of the Global Water Initiative is actually imparting that knowledge and making that freely available. And that could be through workshops, webinars, you know, other forums, conferences, and so on. So as processing engineers, you know, we do have a critical role to play. And, you know, water is something that needs to be considered at the beginning of the process, not as you go through or at the end. So, you know, again, we need to be designing and readying mine sites for closure right from the beginning. So, yep, there's some technologies that we've got, and there's a few of them there, which I won't go into. Again, all great, but all come at expense and time and varying degrees of success depending on the type of mineralogy and the type of setting that your deposit is in. So maybe in question time, some people can mention some of their solutions that they've come up with. So, and again, I would like to hear that in the Q&A. So now I've just got a few cobbled things together. I think I've got 6 minutes there, so I'll just really quickly talk about a couple of things. I am a strong advocate for nuclear power being in our energy mix, not least of which because I live in South Australia near the world's largest known uranium deposit. I think there's been a huge amount of shift just even in the last 2 or 3 months. I was in the UK for 2 months when the coalition's policy broke regarding nuclear. So I kind of feel like I missed out on all the fun there, but I did follow it online. I have been on the organising committee of an international uranium conference for the last 19 years, and that is on again in Adelaide next month, now called the Global Uranium Conference. So we do cover everything from exploration, processing, regulation, nuclear energy, nuclear medicine, lots of environmental things. We cover markets as well. So that's a great event. And I think fundamentally, Australia needs to look at itself in the mirror and say, you know, we're sending uranium offshore and expecting other people to look after our waste. And, you know, it's just not on. We obviously have great conditions in this country for storage, for safe storage of waste. And not just from the mining, but also, of course, from the radioisotopes and the other medical procedures that come out of the Lucas Heights reactor. So we've had a few missteps where we've tried to get things happening. The Kimber decision to overrule that as a storage facility was very disappointing, as was the failed Royal Commission that we had in South Australia some years ago. So I'm not going to talk about skills shortage. Now, I know my friend Angelica is online and we're having lunch today. I do have to give her a shout out because whilst I'd always been passionate about tailings, it was when I met Angelica here in Brisbane, I think it was 4 years ago now, she really changed my life and my outlook on what we're doing. And that's when I really knew that it was absolutely critical that we prevent these disasters from happening. So I won't go into great detail. I think I've probably spoken enough about CEEC, and I've got a few little brochures there and you can follow the links and to our website. You can see there some of our sponsors and some of those will be in the room as well. CEEC's mission is really, well, it's the three C's. So collaboration, communication and celebration. So we share knowledge, which is communication. We have our CEEC medals, which will be presenting 2 weeks' time in Perth. So Grant Ballantyne wasn't able to make it today at the last minute, but he'll be assisting me at the MilOps conference to present the CEEC medals. So Grant's the chair of the technical advisory group and the panel that assesses the medals. We had a record submissions this year, which was fantastic. And those CEEC medals used to only focus on energy and comminution, but they're now broadened to cover water, tailings and other waste. So that's been a great initiative. And I've mentioned workshops already and case studies. So anytime you come across a paper that you think is really demonstrating best practice, send it through to us. And we have our technical advisory group just have a look at those, and if we think that they fit in with CEEC's mission, we're very happy to share those. So we've got the QR code there as well, and I do believe that is the end. So there we go. So we can now have questions.
Thank you so much, Janine. That was a really interesting talk. Do we have any questions? I think we have one online one, but if there are any in the audience.
Now, should I put a different slide on here, or? I don't think I did one of those, so we'll just.
Maybe the QR.
Yeah, ran out of time for that. But I've got my cards there as well. I think everybody knows my address. Yeah. No, it's not going to work.
Thank you, Janine.
Yes.
In your archetypes, you didn't have coal. Was there a reason for that?
Well spotted, well spotted. Look, I personally, professionally, have had very little to do with coal in my career. We did quite a lot of it at UQ for obvious reasons, and I did one stint of vacation work up at Goonyella. We at CEEC tend to focus on metalliferous. That's just always been the charter. So not to say that we are against particularly metallurgical coal, obviously, but you know, there's a transition that needs to happen, and everybody knows that. But we don't have any sponsors in the coal sector. I don't think we've ever been approached. Joe's probably better placed to, but if somebody was to approach us, we'd certainly consider it. But our focus has generally been in metalliferous, particularly given we started out life as comminution and energy focused, which is obviously a different equation in coal and iron ore and those bulk commodities. So.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Janine. Very interesting talk. There is one online question. So how can gravity-driven filtration systems be effectively utilized in tailings management to enhance the dewatering process? And is it feasible to standardize these systems for widespread use in mines, particularly in developing nations?
Okay, that's a big one. So I assume we're talking about some kind of limbs separator on the tailings stream to dewater. I just kind of missed the very first part. But obviously gravity is hugely beneficial and should be used at all times. And Tim and I spent a lot of time in the heavy medium plant in Mount Isa with buckets of slop. And that was very much a gravity fed plant as well. So we are doing some work, and I know, I think it's Steinert and FL Schmidt have a drum separator that's being used quite extensively. So I guess the sort of wishy-washy answer is whatever we come up with that works, it'll be hopefully standardised as much as you can standardise. But when you're dealing with deposits that are all different, it kind of isn't a one-size-fits-all. But I think a technology like dewatering should have application really, really broadly. Do you think that answers the question?
Hi, Janine. So this is, forgive me, this has been a bit cheeky, but your slide on nuclear, I note you think nuclear should be part of an energy mix moving forward, and part of the reason for that is that battery technology isn't there and things like SMRs are on the way. So given that it takes roughly 20 years to build a nuclear plant, are you particularly pessimistic about the science of battery development? First part of the question. And second part, do you think there's a fundamental flaw with CSIRO's Gen Cost report in where they determined that nuclear was just simply not feasible for Australia?
Okay, I did have a slide there on the Gen Cost report because I could do an entire presentation on that. Are there any CSIRO people in the room? I did do a lecture at the annual dinner last year where I did talk a lot about Gen Cost, and there were people, a lot of CSIRO people in the room who, as it happens, agreed with my assessment of that report, and a lot of other people, and the second version that's just come out as well, which is not much better than the first. So yes, I believe it's fundamentally flawed. I think the conversation is so politically driven in Australia that the science and the engineering is being lost in the political rhetoric that's going on. You know, there's, yeah, without sort of going into all of the history of how the bans came into place, you know, this is something that's been, you know, 30 years in Australia where we've been a literal desert when it comes to participating in activities that the rest of the world has been. But having said that, we are not starting from scratch. So I am incredibly optimistic. We have an absolutely brilliant nuclear industry in this country across all aspects. So, you know, of course, we've got Lucas Heights, and the radionucleodes coming out of there are heavily, you know, highly sought after all over the world. And that really came into play during COVID in particular. And of course, we've got very good radiation specialists. I was a radiation safety officer for most of my career, having worked around density gauges and then in mineral sands, where we separated out the monazite, buried the monazite, then dug it up again and then buried it again, and then, you know, rinse and repeat. And of course, now everyone wants thorium, and you know, it's very much political rather than technical. If we had a burning platform and we needed to have nuclear in this country in 5 years, we could do it. So I don't buy the 20-year thing. The Barak station in Saudi was, I think, 6-8 years, something like that. So state-of-the-art, large-scale nuclear. So I'm not talking SMRs at the moment. But there's also the microreactors that a lot of people are not talking about. The politicians seem to have learnt the SMR term, but they haven't kind of gone further down, and microreactors are particularly good for Australia because of our huge distances and sparse population. Now, you mentioned batteries. Again, I believe, you know, we need a mix, a sensible mix, and batteries are very important with that. We have a huge Tesla battery at our place in South Australia. We have the largest amount of solar panels you can fit on a house, and we still pay 3 times the cost for energy as you do on the East Coast. It hasn't worked in South Australia. The renewables only approach has not worked because the energy system is very complex, because it's not just generation, it's distribution as well. So I might stop there, but it is very, very complex, and you know, there are, but I guess I'll finish by saying I'm incredibly optimistic, because if anyone is over in Adelaide and can get to the Global Uranium Conference, you will see the calibre of people that we have in this country. And one being, who I should mention, they're 2 amazing nuclear law experts, Helen Cook and Kirsty Braybon. They'll both be speaking at the conference. And they, Helen in particular, did all the legal negotiations and frameworks for Ontario for their transition. And our nuclear medicine people are, yeah, we've got a very strong industry. So if anyone tells you we don't, that's not true. And I would like to encourage, if there are any young people or people who just want to change in career, to upskill, reskill. You know, there's some courses being offered now. UNSW's got a few. There's some in South Australia, but we need more, because we obviously need more to work on the AUKUS arrangement as well, which at the moment is it's a bit of a pipe dream as far as having enough people.
Thanks, Janine. I hoped you'd have more to say on that.
Long Bin from Environmental Centers, SMI. Do you think we saw this rapidly increasing interest in nuclear power, Ranger uranium mine could be restarted?
Wow, this question has been posed, and I'm part of a wide-ranging, diverse group of a WhatsApp group called the Lifters. So our primary aim is to lift the bans. And there has been a lot of discussion about restarting Ranger. It's a very complex ecosystem. I think we have gone too far now down that path, and there's just been so much money spent, and you know the community there has really been decimated as far as, you know, the news will always find somebody they can throw a microphone in front of who will say, you know, the mine was terrible and I'm an Indigenous person and I was against it. But the vast majority of the Indigenous community were very much involved in all aspects of the Ranger mine. And of course, they've all lost their, you know, really good jobs as a result. So it's those types of decisions, I guess, have ramifications for a long time, but I never say never, but it'd be very complex to restart. Yeah. It's absolutely enormous, yeah. And you do find too that maybe we need to look more at the ISR, the in situ recovery for uranium as well. So more down the lines of what Boss Energy is doing at Honeymoon and those. So, but another interesting thing that's happened recently that some of you will definitely be aware of is the restart of the 3 Mile reactor in the US. And I think that's incredibly interesting given that, you know, and this is to power data centres, which of course we're going to need so much more of, but the price that they're prepared to pay for that power to keep all of these data centres ticking over, I think is going to be a game changer there. And this is a conversation we've been having at CEEC as well, in terms of how we've assessed the percentage of energy that goes into comminution or indeed mining in total. And you had Steve Morrell here, a month or so ago, talking about this as well. You know, the equation has shifted. There's the use of energy is moving into areas that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. So I think there needs to be a complete rebalancing of all of that. Tim.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah, just trivial observation. First of all, just a huge number of aspects you're looking at here, just enormous scope, each of which has its own database, no doubt, and its you know, its own leader. I wonder if you have contacted the people who are running those databases. I mean, for example, in CSIRO, there are probably a dozen databases that touch on each one of those, all of which are independent and don't speak to one another, by the way. I just wondered how you're planning to address that issue.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that, actually. That's been a huge element of getting started on this water project, is that we looked at what was out there. And you've got organisations like Scarn and Associates who are in the UK, and they are selling water databases, but you know, it's $15,000, $20,000 US or pounds, I think. And they're then specific to the commodity. So you buy the copper database, you know, unless you're a big tier miner, you can't afford to do that. And they are, you know, their model is very commercial. So yes, we talk to them. We've had some of their people participate in our workshops because we think it's important that they know what we're doing. Because initially they saw us as a threat because we're going to be available, everything is free. But, you know, we've explained that we're actually doing something quite different, and that is actually educating people as well. They're just selling data, you know. We are actually looking at understanding the data, and that's where the context comes in. There are so many reports going out there, sustainability reports with lots of numbers and pictures and, you know, but very, meaningless in terms of understanding what's actually going on. CSIRO, we've also approached. It's a watch and wait with them. Their answer was pretty much doesn't fit into our commercial structure at the moment. So we have invited them to collaborate. There are individuals who work at CSIRO who are collaborating as professionals. And that's another thing. We have a lot of people who collaborate without their company badge on, but with their personal professional hats. So step one of the scope for the Global Water Initiative is what's out there. We've already made a start and we had a lot of information on tailings already and water associated with that through the Global Minerals Professional Alliance that I was chairing for a number of years when I was AusIMM president. And we initiated a global action on tailings just after the Brumadinho disaster. Since I left AusIMM, it's not really done a great deal, but I believe it's being resurrected now. So Laurie Riemeyer has picked up the charge there, and we've just got our Teams group set up again to look at that. But there's a lot of information out there, and then you've got the ICMM's GISTM, and on it goes.
Janine, thanks so much for the talk and welcome back. You mentioned CEEC a lot in the talk, and but I wonder if you could, we haven't got much time left, but there would be people in the room and online who don't know what CEEC is. It is a unique organization. Could you explain very briefly what it is and how it adds value to big issues like water? I think you had a slide with some documents on it.
I did. So yes, so CEEC was established 2011. Tim was one of the founding patrons and is still a patron, and Joe was one of the founding directors. You were on the first board, I think? Yeah. So it is unique in that it is a group of, started out as mainly mineral processors, but has now expanded into a lot more of an interdisciplinary group. So there are now on our board social scientists, chemical engineers, mining engineers, geologists, geotechnical, and our board is very international. So we have a director in Brazil, we have someone in Paris, we have someone in the US, a couple in Canada, various parts of Canada as well. Singapore, a few in Brisbane, a couple in Adelaide, Perth. I think I've covered most of them, which makes it hard to get people together for board meetings as well. So this is another area where it's always been difficult to have people who have the time, because as Tim loves to say, when you want something done, you ask a busy person, but there are some limits to that. But very, very unique in that CEEC has the ability to bring people together into a room in a trusted environment to talk about the things that haven't worked and the things that may work, and out of that develop roadmaps and ways to actually roll out that into industry. And the way we work with our sponsors is quite unique as well. And we have a network of what we call advocates who are also situated all around the world. And I think we've got about 14 or 15 advocates at this point in time. So it's very much just an outreach thing, to make people aware of CEEC. A lot of people knew us from the energy curves, but then things went a bit quiet for a number of years, and then through COVID, where the face-to-face events were few and far between. So we're in a sort of rebuilding phase now. But the CEEC medal's always been a very strong offering for CEEC. Does that cover it, Tim? Have I mentioned, was there some particular point you...
All right. So So you're a little bit over time. I'll just give like the last quick question to online. Nadia, she appreciates her work at CEEC, and I love your summary of diverse roles that mineral processing engineers play in water. So her question is, do you think there is a broad recognition in the profession of these diverse contributions, for example, tailings and water quality legacies? Or is there a tendency to focus primarily on water efficiency technology?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. And no, I don't think it's well recognised. I remember when I was going through uni, we had our uni T-shirts that we used to do up, and there was one year that while I was there that was all we do is LSD, and it was liberate, separate, dispose. It's a lot more complex than that. The role of the metallurgist is very, very wide ranging, and I'm sure the mining engineers, the geos will argue that theirs is very complex as well. But I do think the metallurgist cannot often be the glue because, you know, we will deal with the geos and the mineralogists, the mining engineers, the geotechs, and, you know, health and safety and environmental, all kind of have an overlap with the processing engineers. So I do think that yeah, we're probably undersold at times for the role that we have. And as I love to say, you know, it doesn't matter what's in the ground, and you know how good it is if you can't separate it and you can't sell it. It's not a deposit. And I think now more than ever, the added bit to that would be if you don't have community acceptance, you can't mine it. So doesn't matter how technically sound everybody is on the project, if you haven't done your you know, the work that needs to be done to establish trust with the community, it's all for nothing. So
Thank you so much, Janine. Let's thank Janine once again for her presentation. No, so I think please continue the discussion afterwards. There are some tea and biscuits in the kitchen area. Thanks again, Janine. We really appreciate you coming here, and hopefully we'll have you again soon in the
thank
near
you very
future.
much. It's a pleasure.
And thank you everyone for your attendance, and see you again next week.